What's going on, guys? CNC Cards here, back with another video. I'm going to walk you guys through 5 tips on low budget sports card investing from me personally that I like to use when I'm investing in sports cards, since my budget isn't extremely high at the moment either. So hopefully this can help you as well. So without further ado, we'll get into my first tip, and this is probably the most important tip that I have, and that would be just setting a spending limit. Set a budget. You don't want to go over a certain amount, X amount of dollars, say $100 or so you want to put in for that week, month, however long you're looking to invest. And then just use that money, invest that money into players that you think are going to have a great overall long-term longevity and have the most upside. That's another big one. And then by doing that, you're not breaking the bank. You're setting yourself a reasonable spending limit in which you can work within. So I'm sure that makes sense. And that's how I go about it as well. I like to make sure I set myself a spending budget. I don't go over that. I might go right up to it, a little below that, but I do not want to go over that threshold of my spending limit. Especially when you're low budget investing like this, that is definitely the number one most important thing that I definitely wanted to discuss with you guys first. So now my second tip is don't invest more money into sports cards until you've made your return on your previous investments. Now this is huge because when you set your budget, you're putting X amount of dollars into that, and you're doing it for a reason. You don't have a super high budget, so you're doing more of low budget investing so that you're not, like I said earlier, breaking the bank necessarily. So by not investing more money until you've made your returns on those last investments, it's going to save you like the headache of maybe losing more money than you're putting in and things like that. And it's harder to keep track of your investments. But this way, make sure you make at least your money back on the previous investment. So you say you invest $100 in X amount of cards, and you make $100 back on, say, 3 out of the 5 cards. You already made your money back on those investments. So great, take that money and now reinvest that into the sports card market, because that way you're making the money back that you spent previously to ensure yourself that you're not losing money. That makes sense. This way, you made your money back on your last investments, and now you can move forward and invest in more cards and more players, maybe even invest in more high-end upscale players this time around, because you have made your money back. So you can take little steps up and keep working your way up, just like that. But it's always good to start low like that, and just don't invest more into the sports card market until you've made your money back on your previous investments. Okay, now my number 3 tip here for low-budget investing would be don't invest in wild card players. Now, what I mean by wild card players, like, say, fantasy football, for example, a boom or bust type player, where one week they might boom, go have a crazy game, put up a lot of, say, their wide receiver put up a lot of yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, something like that, or they're a bust and just do absolutely nothing, get you 0 points, put up a dud, and then you're sitting there frustrated with your fantasy team because they're not winning. We all have those players on our teams for the boom or bust, but that's just an example of how I can relate this to the sports card market, is like a boom or bust type investment, where you're investing in someone that is a very streaky player. They have good games here, but then they have bad games here. Just like a recent example of someone that's a wild card investment, just recently is Talen Horton-Tucker of the Los Angeles Lakers. And his prices have exploded. They just skyrocketed. After he had those 2 crazy preseason games, and then after LeBron actually tweeted about him, saying that he thinks he's like the next guy, and he's a great young talent. And that really got his card prices going up and up and up. And a player like him, he has not established himself at all. And that's why I'm calling him a wild card investment, is because he's not established. He's only played in the preseason so far. Not saying he's not going to pan out and be a great player, but that's someone that you don't want to invest in if you're low budget investing, because you don't really know what's going to happen to him at the moment. He could have a couple more games and just fall off the face of the earth. You know what I mean? You will never hear about Talen Horton-Tucker ever again. And I'm sure you've seen plenty of players like this over the years that have all the hype. Just a fun example is last year in the bubble when they had the few preseason games. You guys remember Bobo with the Denver Nuggets? He had like a crazy game. This is one game. He had a bunch of blocks and all these other, all these other great stats. And his cards exploded right after that, and they just fell right off the map. So if you bought in on Bobo when he was, he had that great game and his prices were up, if you bought in on him, you probably would have ended up losing a lot of money on him at the moment. But of course his prices have picked up more recently, so that would have been more of a successful long-term investment. But at the time, I would consider Bobo as well a wild card investment. So just be careful and kind of stay away from those. My advice will be just investing in someone, just staying around the NBA right now. Donovan Mitchell of the Utah Jazz, just because he's a guy that's had an established few years in the NBA, great few years in the NBA. And his prices are actually very low. If you guys saw my last video, I talked about the 3 guys that I'm investing in the NBA sports card market. And he was one of the guys on my list. And he's on my list because, just for an example, his Donruss Optic is selling for about $20 to $25, I believe it was, with the Prism around $60 to $80 right now. And a player like him who already is an established player, and you know going forward in the future he's going to continue to be successful, at least we hope. That's a guy you want to invest in because his cards are already lower than I believe they should be, which is why I am investing in him. But at the same time, he's also established. You'll have much more peace of mind investing in a player like Donovan Mitchell versus a player that's quote-unquote hotter right now, as in Talen Horton-Tucker. My number 4 tip now would be not to overpay when you're investing. I definitely wanted to include this in these 5 tips that I'm sharing with you guys, just because it's very easy to want to invest in somebody and you'd be willing to pay whatever amount just to get your hands on that card because you're so confident in him, you don't want to miss out on his cards, or maybe you see a deal and you're afraid it's going to go up. So here's a tip. What I do personally is if I'm looking to buy into a guy, I will go on eBay and just go under the completed items tab and the sold items tab just to check all the recent sales on eBay for that specific card. And that way you can do like a side-by-side comparison of where he was selling at over the past week or so and what people are asking on eBay, whether at auction, buy it now. That way you have a reference to judge, what you'd be willing to pay for that specific player based on the previous sales. That way you can ensure yourself that you're not indeed overpaying for a card. And now for my last tip, I would just say always turn your profits into higher end investments. And so what I mean by this is when you're making your returns on your previous investments, your low budget investments to start out just to get going. Like me, I'm a very low budget investor at the moment. I don't have a whole lot of money to be thrown out into the market right now. So this is just what I'm doing personally. But what I do is when I put my low budget investments in, I get my returns. We'll say the $100, I put $100 in, I made that $100 back. What I will then do is take that money and instead of buying maybe more quantity in cards and players, I will zero in on one guy specifically that I'm very confident in. He's an established player. His prices are a little down, which is a great time to buy. And I'll invest into a higher end card of him, whether it's his Prism Silver, Raw, or maybe a PSA 10 base Prism, an Optic 10, just something a little more higher end. That way, your profits in the future will be more and more. That's because, when you're getting graded cards and things like that, they're much more sought after, and they're much more of a long-term investment that can drive much more revenue in the future, just so that I can set myself up for even more success in the future by investing in higher-end cards and higher-end players, quote-unquote. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to share a few tips of mine that I like to personally use when I'm doing my low-budget investing into the sports card market. It's a great time to start investing, so I hope I could give you guys some guidance and some good advice for you guys moving forward into your future investments. But yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind, just drop some comments below. Let me know who you're investing in right now, what your favorite way to low budget invest or just invest in general is. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to our channel. I'm starting to put out a lot of new content, and I really hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am making it, so we can connect, and get some good conversations going around in the sports card market, which is very hot right now. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.